Each applicant will be taken in the order that's on the agenda. The applicant can describe what their application is and why they're looking for a variance. The public has an opportunity to comment. All testimony before the board is under oath. And at the end of the agenda, well, after every application is closed, when we get to the end of the agenda, that's the deliberation part. At that time, there's no more testimony or evidence is taken. We'll deliberate and vote. The applicants and the public can wait to the end of the meeting to find out whether or not the application was granted, or they can call the zoning administrator in the morning. So that brings us to item number 1, and I'm told there's no sound on the video or Zoom.
On the cable channel?
On the cable channel.
Oh, all right. Let me go talk to cable.
Please stand by.
Maybe you just have to talk louder.
That's farther to go.
Okay, I'm told that the sound should be on now for folks watching on cable. Let me see if Barbara's watching.
For all those many people out there.
For all the people watching on the, out in TV land.
Okay. All right, so that brings us to item number 1, Stewart Shops. There's a request from the applicant to have it adjourned to the February 14th meeting, and so I would make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All those in favor signify by aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Well, that motion is carried. That brings us to item number 2, Verizon Wireless, 9-11 Raymond Avenue. Is there someone here from that application?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Scott Olson is here on behalf of Verizon Wireless.
Very good.
And I also, in case the board has any questions, we also have a few. Michael Crosby is here with Verizon Wireless. He is the RF engineer. And Brian Sarchi is here also. He's a site acquisition person.
All right, and so you had an opportunity to review our experts' comments on your application.
That's correct.
Did you have any concerns? I saw the letter that you wrote, but did you have any other concerns not incorporated in that?
No, the only concern ultimately comes down to, I think it's a protocol that Mr. Musso is asking for about the rooftop access. And I just want to reiterate that our analysis shows that the rooftop will be fully compliant with the FCC emission requirements. So I'm not really quite sure what type of protocol is necessary or required. But I just want to make sure that the board's fully aware of that rooftop, to the extent that people ever have to go up there, it is fully compliant with the FCC requirements.
In the sense that it's safe for other workers on the rooftop. Is that what you're referring to?
That's correct. Now, obviously, if we need to do work on the antennas, we will have a technician on the penthouse. On the penthouse, the emissions are stronger, but we have OSHA and occupational limits that we have to comply with. So all workers will deal with that, and they will be protected. And they should really be the only ones that are up on that penthouse.
Okay. Any other comments from any of the applicants or the applicants' people?
Mr. Chairman, I do want to note that we have Mike Musso on the line, our consultant.
Okay.
Yeah, if we have questions for him.
All right. And Mr. Musso?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. Chair, members of the board, members of the public, thanks for having me here tonight. As by your reference, you are in receipt of our tech memo that was submitted.
Yes.
I'd be happy to go through that if you'd like. But just on the thread from Mr. Olson, Our recommendation that was put in is fairly standard. We do acknowledge, after taking a hard look at the RF emissions analysis by SiteSafe, a firm whose work we've seen before, we agree with their assumptions. The entire main rooftop, which I visited back in December, based on the orientation of the one antenna, it would be compliant with the general public, as would all areas, as importantly, outside of the rooftop, on the property, and beyond. They do comply with the maximum permissible exposure limit. We do put the recommendation in, however, if there's ever somebody on the building side that would like to go up, reflash the penthouse, work on the parapet, the near field area that I refer to is normally within a couple feet of the antenna. Beyond that, you quickly get towards the compliance for living, working, being untrained in proximity to that antenna. The applicant's RF emissions expert, SiteSafe, whose work we reviewed, also put in signage, which takes the site into compliance. This would be on the access door to the roof and around the antenna. And they also mention an RF safety protocol, an RSP, which is typical. So all I'm saying is it's a good idea that this gets filed with the building permit, should this application be approved and constructed. And it's important to note to the building manager that, look, if anybody wants to get up on that penthouse, aside from the signage, they just need to coordinate that appropriately. So I think this is something that's routine, actually, because we do see so many rooftop sites around our region, including, in the town of Poughkeepsie. So the RF emissions are certainly something that's important. We did request some additional information. It was addressed partially, but I took a close look at the calculations and the plots that were provided, translated them into general public maximum permissible exposure limits. So the conclusions on that in my report do stand, but I do have the recommendations at the very end there that I think you saw in boldface. So that's something that we feel is typical and should be entertained.
Okay, and why don't you just reiterate those?
Right, so I'm not sure if I could share my screen or not, but I gave you, and I apologize, but I wanted to put them in here, several images and call outs of the proposed facility. I do include some site visit notes. You get an idea of what that rooftop looks like. It's not observed to have any kind of access. There's a locked door that would access that rooftop to begin with. I was happy to see that. And of course, signage would be added in accordance with FCC. I do summarize the application findings and the supplemental that was submitted right before the end of the year. I do talk about the need for the site in terms of infilling capacity. So this is typical trend in the industry that sites that were built years ago or maybe several years ago, the capacity limits are reached because they're not just for voice, but they're for a host of other services on wireless devices. As far as RF emissions go, I do note what I just went over. They'll be significantly below the general public maximum permissible exposure limit, which is the health-based criteria that's used to evaluate cell sites like this one. And I do present for you also the photo simulations. You can see kind of the before and after images as you go through the memo. The findings, recommendations, starting near the end of the memo on page 14. I can go through any of those, but as far as radio frequency emissions, I note that the applicant's expert who evaluated this for signage at the roof access in the penthouse, that should be installed for sure, and the applicant's committed to doing that. It should also be routinely inspected and maintained in accordance with the FCC rules and regulations. that would be on the applicant to do that. I also say to eliminate the potential for RF exposure at levels above the general population in PE. The protocol should be established and maintained for rooftop access for persons not trained in RF emissions. That would be, as I noted, maintenance workers perhaps that are going to do construction work on the penthouse or near the penthouse. Such work should be coordinated between Verizon and the property owner / building operator. And the applicant's RF emissions expert had recommended to file an RF safety plan. A copy of that should be provided to the building department and run with the site. So if you'd like me to go through anything in more detail, that's fine. I'd be happy to do that, of course. I also have one other comment on the aesthetics. So looking at the canister antenna, and you can see that in the simulations, and looking at the colors and textures of the roof, the smart recommendations for aesthetics are a matte finish would be recommended for all the equipment. And one of the canister models that was presented in the specs notes a brown antenna, or as known as a radome, a cover over that. So that's at the very end of the tech memo. There's an image that's inserted back there. I think those were, the RF emissions and health. We always look at closely. The aesthetics are something that is also important for any wireless communication proposal. So that, in a nutshell, is what I presented in the memo, and that you have in front of you to evaluate.
Okay, did anyone have any questions?
Oh, good. This is Mike Crosby from Verizon. Can I ask one question about that or make one statement?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. Mike Crosby, Verizon Wireless. I'm the radio frequency engineer for the site, and been before the town of Poughkeepsie several times before. I can't quite see the pictures, but I know there's some names there that I recognize, so nice to see you all again. Mr. Musso's report, the only thing that I would raise as a concern for me is actually covering the antenna with an additional radome. So the antenna already does minimize the visual impact, because of the small size, and I think that I don't have any objection to the antenna being painted, but to add an additional radome because of the stealth nature of the canister antenna, adding an additional radome over the existing radome is redundant and unnecessary in my opinion, and it does come with potential downside RF impact in the sense that what we find when we put different materials, even if they're specifically designed to allow radio frequency signals to pass through them, we have issues from time to time with different forms of interference. One of them is what we call return loss, where it can actually have, depending upon the distance of the radiating elements inside the antenna to the edge of that radome, it can actually have a reflection that actually has a negative impact on the performance of the site. And because of that reason, I would ask that if additional measures are being taken besides the fact that the small canister antenna is already minimal in size and its nature. If it's necessary to be painted, I would ask that you just require that the antenna itself be painted as opposed to adding any other additional radomes or other equipment around the antenna, since that definitely comes with the potential for a negative impact. Appreciate the consideration of that.
Are there any technical problems with painting the canister?
There are, for 4G LTE, there's no issues with painting the canister.
Okay, and
yeah, and I think that would be appropriate.
There could be maintenance issues down the road where, if the antenna needs to be replaced for some reason, then of course you have to paint it again, or if the paint chips off, that it needs to be maintained. But other than potential maintenance issues, there's no RF issue with paint on 4G LTE antenna.
Okay, and you concur with that, Mr. Musso?
Yeah, and I wasn't necessarily saying put a radome or an additional shell on this. It was just an example that had come up. I do agree with Mr. Crosby, and even in the photo simulations that were presented, they wouldn't include a radome. That was just for the canister antenna. So I think matte colors for anything, the mount, the antenna, other equipment, and the radome could be painted a brown color that's consistent with the roof, the building, or the parapet. That makes sense to me.
All right, and that's acceptable to the applicant?
It is to me, yes.
Okay. All right.
Regarding the antenna, I would defer to Scott on the remainder of the site. I don't want to make the call for that, but Scott can call that.
In terms of painting the color, obviously, we have done that before. We leave that up to the board that's reviewing the application. My personal opinion is sometimes you don't want to see it painted because it, and again, I sometimes if you paint it a darker color, it stands out a little more. Sometimes the lighter color can blend with the sky, but again, I think everybody has a different opinion. I'm not trying to dissuade you from that. I'm just trying to throw that out there as just a potential issue, but it's totally up to the board.
If I may, since this has to go to the planning board again for site plan anyway, if the board is comfortable with that, we could allow the planning board to kind of take a final look at the color aesthetic, issue. And I think that would be okay. But
All right, and they would take care of all the signage and the protective
the signage and those things would also be part of what would be covered in the site plan as well. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do any of the board members that are Zooming have any questions?
I have no questions.
Diane?
No questions.
Larry? Tony?
No questions.
Simona?
Yeah, I'm sorry, no questions.
No questions from me either.
Okay. Anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this application? Come on up.
Yes, I do.
All right, well,
Hello?
okay, why don't you state your name?
My name is Leslie, and I'd like to delegate my time to Michelle, but I do want to say that the fact that there's any concern at all about being in proximity to this equipment has to be a red flag considering the population density, regardless of meeting the outdated regulatory parameters. I'd like to delegate the rest of my time to Michelle.
Very good. Okay.
Come on up, Michelle.
Just ahead, hi everybody. Thanks for being here on this cold night. The last time I was here, it was interesting for me to look back on what was going on the 13th, which is Fishkill also had a...
Excuse me, could you put your mask up, please?
Arthur, will you be able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Let's see. So, starting again, in Fishkill there was also a meeting on the 13th, and nobody, well, I won't say nobody, but a lot of the room did not have masks on. So we're protecting ourselves from COVID here, on a town-to-town basis, it looks like. But Fishkill is actually protecting their town in a meaningful way by writing ordinances. I just want to say that. I wish I could move to Fishkill, but I guess I can't. So I wanted to start out with asking, for the public, for myself and the public, documents so that they together ensure that the applied for frequency bands indeed are lawful. So I think it was told to me that it wouldn't be high band, so I guess it would be middle band. So I would really like to see documentation that states that, and I think the zoning board they absolutely have the right to ask for that in writing. And this way, we can, ensure that positively in writing in order to ensure the legality of those bands. There is densification going on in Raymond Avenue area. I know that because I've done measurements myself. There's more than one antenna. There, I think, are a couple of large towers, and that the signals do converge at that point, but again, no one's doing measurements on converging signals and what that would do to biology. And the problem with this all is that we won't be able to distinguish radiation poisoning from viral, something that might be implied as a viral problem. So some of the same effects are the same as radiation poisoning. So there's definitely that. But anyway, high levels already exist in the Raymond Avenue area compared to, let's say, Israel or many other European countries. Canada and the United States have permitted levels up the wazoo, but Europe doesn't. So that's interesting. I know this board can't do anything about that, but it can create capacity caps on the equipment in our town code so that it can't be fudged with. So 5G is spreading all over the place, everybody. New York City is a nightmare. People are coming up this way because they are afraid of 5G. And yeah, that's why they're coming. So with all this densification, I would not want to live on Raymond Avenue myself. And that this will also be spreading in other areas, I'm sure, of Poughkeepsie, because you're going to be hammered with a lot of applications with shot clocks attached to them, and you know, there's going to be overwhelm, and it'll be difficult to deal with all of the applications, and that's the whole point. Insurance. There's always a Chapter 32 radiation exclusion clause. So when you ask for insurance from Verizon, we want to see insurance. Sure, it'll include fire and fall protection. That's great, but that's more than what's involved in an antenna. There are emissions to consider, and then there's that radiation exclusionary clause set by Lloyd's of London, because they don't want to insure radiation poisoning. They don't want to insure against that. So. Then we deal with informed consent, and there is not any of that. Some towns, what they do is they post, oh, we're going to put an antenna in your living environment or your working environment, and then the public has a chance to, say something if they know anything. But informed consent is when you're informed and then you concede, you consent. There's none of that. It's all being hidden under fair use. So if you're using it, then that means you've consented. But that's not the way things are done here in America. It's a little bit different, but again, everybody's working under contractual agreements, and as far as I'm concerned, I never agreed and signed any consent form that said, well, this could possibly screw your health up. Okay, so we need to consider that, and I hope Jim Nelson has thought about this, and informed consent is going to be a really big thing in the weeks to come. Not necessarily in the realm of RF microwave radiation, that's coming. But I'm saying in other areas, informed consent, and people will have a big problem going forward. So the question that I do ask is, if we're not talking about fair use and there is something called informed consent, is the municipality going to be responsible for harm?
You have 30 seconds remaining.
So I did also mention in my last letter about Scott Olson's comments. Many of them were absolutely wrong in terms of the language of the courts. It was, he perjured himself, whether knowingly or unknowingly. There are health effects. He actually said there were no health effects from RF microwave radiation. I don't want this in our town center. I don't live there, but I know people who work there, and again, informed consent. Nobody's informed. Nobody of large number are informed in our town. So thank you for letting me speak, and have a good evening, and please don't do this.
Thank you. Anyone else from the community who wishes to comment on this application? Hearing none. Were there any other questions from any other members of the board?
No questions.
No questions.
Okay.
No questions.
Just one for me, just for more clarification. I looked at a draft of a statement that was circulated earlier, and I believe it indicated that boards such as ours cannot consider safety and health effects per the FCC regulations. And I want to know if that's the case, and how does that impact this?
So Tony, I can address that. The way the law currently is, the ZBA does not have the ability to deny this application on the basis of perceived effects from EF or RF radiation, EMF. There was a recent decision which Michelle cites to, and what that did, it called into question the methodology that was used by the FCC and told them that they have to go back and take another look at it. But at this point, that's still pending, and there hasn't been a new ruling from the FCC, so we are still bound by the original until the FCC looks at the new ruling and makes another recommendation. So as it stands now, this board cannot consider the potential health effects of RF radiation on as a basis for denial of the application.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
Mike, do I have that correct? Is there anything, Mike Musso, anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I just did want to add to that. What Lisa said is correct, is that municipalities, their hands are tied. If it's documented that there's compliance with the FCC radio frequency MPE, that cannot be a basis of denial. The lawsuit that I think Ms. Squires had provided information on prior, I think there's something important just to elucidate on that. A lot of that was based on small cells and 5G, specifically millimeter wave or high frequency 5G. And look, that's still being studied right now. And the ruling that the court put down on that was for non-cancer health effects, the FCC has to button things up more. The MPE goes back several years, 1997. But along the way, 2013 and again in 2019, the FCC was asked to revisit, to work with its sister agencies in the federal government, including the EPA and the and Health and Human Services. And what the court ruled is that they have some more work to do. But Lisa has it down right now. That standard, that MPE, is still applicable. It's something that we're tracking at HDR very closely. There's many questions that come from the board and the public, but I think, Lisa, you do have it correct.
And just a follow-up, just for clarity, this site is what? 4G, 3G? What are we looking at here with this?
Yeah, you'd be looking what would be called a 4G site. High band or high frequency 5G is not in our region yet. It's something that may be coming, and there is actually a condition that I proposed to you at the end of the tech memo. Was, look, if there's high band, high frequency, millimeter wave 5G, there has to be a process of approval set up at the town, whether that's a board or whether that's a building department action. I would also say that the small antenna that's being proposed now, I don't know, and I don't think the applicant knows if that's something that could even accommodate that frequency. So if something is proposed, Tony, in the future, at some date, uncertain, when that band makes its way up into the Hudson Valley and the town of Poughkeepsie, it's very possible that they need to do some retooling on this rooftop site. But I really can't predict when that would be or what that would look like. But to be protective, I thought it was good that I just put something in to the recommendations in the back that would be protective of 5G. No 5G is being proposed here with this.
And I think it's a great recommendation, and thank you, sir. It kind of answers my questions.
If I may just address briefly, I didn't see that condition in Mike's letter or tech memo. Maybe I missed it. Towns, and this is not, what I'm going to say doesn't mean this is what we're planning at all, but towns don't have a right to regulate any type of frequencies. But we're proposing...
To not interrupt when someone else is speaking, ma'am.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about... I didn't hear.
I'm not talking to you, Mr. Olson.
No, it's okay. I understood.
Okay.
In fact, we just went through an issue with this. It was in a local municipality not too far away from you. One of the conditions was, hey, if you want to do 5G in the future, you got to come back to us because we're not going to let you do it. And even though we got an approval, we had to sue them on that. That wasn't the main issue. That was one of the issues. But there was a more important issue that really affected the site. But that was an issue where we said, you know what, we have to stand up for ourselves. You can't do this to us. And that lawsuit's been settled to remove those conditions. Again, that's not something we're looking to do right now, but the FCC has exclusive jurisdiction over what we can and cannot propagate or broadcast.
Okay.
But I believe if you change the antenna configuration or add antennas or something like that, that would then be potentially could be considered a site plan change and something that we could review.
That's something that might be different. I think if your law has that in there about site plan changes, yes, then I'm not saying the towns can't consider this. I'm just saying just the towns are supposed to be able to control the actual frequencies because that's what the FCC's sole jurisdiction is. But if we were to change the configuration and design, yes, we might need a site plan. I'm not trying to take any jurisdiction away from the town.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Diane.
In New Hamburg, not too many months ago, this discussion took place, and we were assured before that any change whatsoever would trigger another application. We were assured that by the town and the people putting it in. So is this different?
I know I was familiar with New Hamburg Fire Department application.
No, not the New Hamburg Fire, White's Marina.
I did that one.
Yes.
So I'm very familiar with that one. And I think exactly. Well, I know I said that we're not talking about 5G, and that is absolutely with that application absolutely correct. I don't remember saying that if we ever change to 5G, we have to come back because my approach to this forever has always been towns just don't have the jurisdiction to regulate the broadcast, the wavelength, because that's what the FCC's exclusive jurisdiction is for. And thinking it this way, and again, we're not proposing to do that 5G high frequency millimeter wavelength here. We're not. There are no plans to do that. We're not proposing it, and that's why I kind of hate to raise the issue a little bit because then it creates an issue where we're not even talking about doing anything. But having said that, think about it this way: if each town was allowed to regulate what a carrier what service it can provide essentially by regulating the frequencies, you would have potentially a completely patchwork network because, well, maybe this town, Poughkeepsie, you don't want us to use a certain frequency, but maybe the city of Poughkeepsie lets us use that. It would be a nightmare from our perspective. That's why the FCC has taken jurisdiction of that, to make sure that we have a heterogeneous and reliable network.
Yeah, and HDR is very understanding of that, working on hundreds of applications over the years. And the recommendation that I had in there is in no way implies that the town is regulating frequency. Again, a change, as Mike Welty put it, a change to the site plan and information. It's just something that would need to be reviewed and approved. That's all. We're not saying or laying out any type of restriction or intervention with what the FCC mandates carriers like Verizon to roll out.
Okay, yeah, just wanted to make sure. But again, if we change the site design, yes, we come back to the planning board with an application for site plan review.
All right, I can see your hands raised. I'll allow one more minute on this, but this is not a topic that's really is germane at all to our discussion tonight. But you have 1 minute.
Thank you very much. TCA Act of 1996, everybody, there were congressional notes that occurred with that. The word operations was moved from one area of control to the municipality. The language was changed so that the word operations was put specifically onto municipal towns' responsibility and authority. Verizon will not talk about this, okay? It is the first duty of towns to protect their citizens, and that's why there was congressional intent to move that word operations. Sure, carriers can put whatever they want, wherever they want it. However, the operations of that is controlled by the municipality because they are solely responsible for the health and safety of the public. Now, if you go back, and I think I have sent this to both Mike and Paul and Jim, you look at the language, and there was that word, and it was moved from one column to the column where municipalities sit. And Harry V. Lehman, who's an attorney, did an analysis, and it does not look good for local municipalities to forget or not know that. So, I mean, I could read you the language, which is in my email. You can reread it if you'd like. But the law specifically states that operations is the role, the municipalities are in charge of the operations of that equipment. So there goes the liability as well. I'm just saying. So this is what's going to happen in the courts. Please reread what I sent. And it's court language. It's not stuff Michelle made up. Thank you very much.
Okay, are there any other comments about anything that's germane to tonight's application?
Sir.
Hearing nothing, then I'll move to close the public hearing on this application.
Second.
Any discussion?
Move.
All those in favor signify by aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Then that motion carries. Okay. That brings us to item number 3. Special use permit, Journey Support Services, 83 Innis Avenue. This is an application for a special use permit to the conducting of a home occupation in a residence. Is there someone here from that application?
Yes.
All right, why don't you state your name, and then you'll be sworn in.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Sharifa Daisley. And I'm Carmen Baker.
Hi, do each of you swear or affirm that the testimony you're going to provide tonight is true and complete to the best of your knowledge?
Yes. Yes.
And I understand, Larry, you're going to recuse yourself on this one?
Yes.
Okay, so Tony S., you'll be a voting member tonight?
Okay.
On this application?
Right.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Who do you want to...
Ms. Daisley or Ms. Baker?
Okay, sorry. Okay. So, based on our application, we're asking for a special use permit for our counseling business and Journey Support Services. There will be 2 residents living here, myself and my sister, and then 2 non-residential staff, along with 5 participants.
Who been part of the council. Yeah. So I am Carmen. I'm Sharifa's mom. Also, I'm one of the person who will be working with the individuals with traumatic brain injury. We provide counseling services. The goal is to reintegrate them into the community so that they can be a part after their brain injury in a hospital setting or a nursing home setting. We are able to assist them in the community and with life skills, and part of that is the counseling. The services, the individuals are dropped off, so it's not required any parking space. They have taxi companies that drop them to and fro. And the property is large enough that it can accommodate off-street parking, so there's no requirement for off-street parking. It's set up. This property has 2 other buildings, and it has a lot that is separate. So that allows us to put parking cars there. It could hold up to 8 cars, but typically it's just Sharifa's car, her sister's car, and
The staff.
And the other 2 staff.
How many clients will you be working with at one time?
Typically, the counseling groups have 5. Sometimes if an individual may need some more support, sometimes they may call and say, hey, can we see you? But typically 5.
5 at one time?
Yes.
And I'm sorry, these are live-in or?
No, they're non-residents. They will come and see us and then they go home.
Okay, and how long would the sessions be?
It depends. Some sessions are an hour, some are 3 or 4, depending on the need of the participant.
Okay, and in your diagram, you indicate a work area in the living room?
Correct.
And how exactly would that be set up?
It's typically a table, and individuals sit and we discuss and talk.
Okay, and in a group setting?
Yes.
Okay. And do you know how much of the building is dedicated to that work area?
Just that space, the living room.
Yes. Do you know area-wise how much that is?
Hold on, let me see if we had calculated. I would roughly say it's like a 10 by 10 space. Well, it's rectangular, so it's a 10 by 12 space in the living room.
Okay. And will that be dedicated to the area or just used when you're having sessions?
It should be dedicated to that area. Because of the pandemic, we would be using it only for that.
Okay. And you indicated that it was possible that there would be more than 5 personnel, 5 clients and people with the clients?
Well, the staff, yes.
No,
My staff.
not the staff, but the people coming with the non-staff people.
Not necessarily. The individuals
Require appointments.
require appointments and schedule. So not necessarily, unless they're in a wheelchair that may need a one person to assist for physical needs, because some of the individuals are in wheelchairs. So if they need an aid that comes with them for support, physical support, if they have to use the bathroom or something, they may need that one-to-one, and the aid may come with them just for that, because we are not trained to toilet. Yeah.
Okay. And what hours would you be operating?
Typically between 9 and 5.
So in a day, how many clients would you be counseling?
A typical day, I would say 6 to 8.
Yeah, but they rotate out.
Yeah, it's a rotation. So you see someone or you see a group and then they leave, and then you may see another group the afternoon. And then if you're doing individual, it's a little different because they're a one-to-one session.
Okay. All right. Christine, do you have any questions?
No, I think that covered it. Thanks, Paul.
Art?
Do you have sessions on Saturday and/or Sunday, or just Monday to Friday?
Some Sundays we do have, based on the population. If they can't see us through the week, we do have Sunday. We would be able to accommodate on Sunday based on the individual. But typically, the most sessions are done during Monday to Friday, not on Saturdays.
Now, these clients, they are always confined, if you will, in the house. These are not anyone that we'd be concerned about wandering out of the house into the streets or things like that, correct?
No, not with most of our participants.
Are independent.
They are independent, and the ones that are disabled because of the brain injury would not be able to do that independently.
Okay. Do you want to ask about the mortgage? Okay, I'm okay, thank you.
Tony, G, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Diane?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, because I see, I mean, the living room is 11 by 24, so are you saying that, I mean, if I'm looking at the right diagram, you're just using a part of that space, and are any of the bedrooms upstairs being used at all, or is this just strictly the living room, nothing else?
Strictly downstairs. It's stairs, and we don't want, so there's, no, it's the bedrooms upstairs. It's strictly located. But whatever's on the diagram, because I was just gave a number out of my head to approximate, that let me get my thing. Whatever's on the picture, I had someone measure it out and put it on the actual picture that I've submitted to you with the measurements.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. It does say 11. It says 11 by 24.
Okay, that's the accurate. Yeah, that's.
I just want to know, it's the whole room, though. It's not just a 10 by 10 section of the room.
No, it's the whole room because, like I said, some of the individuals have a wheelchair, so we need to accommodate the wheelchair with the room.
No more questions.
Tony S.
No questions.
Larry? I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Nope, never mind, Larry. Simona?
Are you currently working with clients in this space?
Not now, no. We are currently at a different location.
And what is the reason for moving it from that location to this one?
We will, financial reasons, one. And two, something that because of where we are located and the population we work with and the trauma, sometimes the environment, it's a very dense area. We're actually at 11 Raymond Avenue, and it has created, with the transportation and stuff and the people we're working with, it can sometimes trigger them because it's too much going on, and coming from a wheelchair, sometimes it creates, so we wanted something with a little more quiet and less frightening to the individuals.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Phyllis? Thanks.
Thank you. So there were two properties on the house that I noted, and it looked like the location is still under renovation. Is that true?
The main building we have not touched the second property because of the winter. That's the second property. There was when the property was purchased, there were some violations that we had to get fixed. So the second property, we have to fix those violations, but that's the construction. It's removed, there was something with an illegal porch. So that's not going to be counted. We couldn't do anything until the spring. But not because.
Okay. I found it difficult to locate the property. Is there a number on the house?
Yeah. Yes.
The entrance is on another street.
Yeah, it's a very strange. So the entrance of 83 is not exactly on, I mean, there is an entrance. You can walk in from the main road, but it's a very busy road. The entrance that is normally used is off of East Arnold, because there's a lot that belongs, I think it's number 7 East Arnold. And that's the side entrance, which is less hectic to enter and much easier to enter the property because of how it's shaped.
So, having said that, are you going to need directional signage anywhere on your business?
Not necessarily, because the providers that bring our individuals to us at our current location, we are normally the ones who give them the instructions. Also, we don't want labeling. Some of the individuals want their privacy. So the goal is not to make it obvious where they feel uncomfortable in the community and being labeled with a brain injury. So that's one of the things why we won't be using, we won't need, because the goal is not to alienate the participant.
Okay, thank you. Paul?
Yes?
We got that email today?
Yes.
Okay, so that'll be addressed next?
Well, I don't know that those concerns are relevant, but if that community person is Zooming, is there anyone else from the community that wishes to comment on this?
We haven't opened the public hearing yet.
Oh, that's true. Okay.
There are no further questions.
Okay. Then is there anyone from the community which wishes to comment on this? Okay, we did receive a letter. Who had some concern about the population that you would be counseling and whether there was any danger to the community.
Okay. Our individuals with a traumatic brain injury, they are not a threat. I've never had a physical altercation with any one of them. Most of them have cognitive deficit, and the role is for us to really support them with the habits of really relearning to read and write, to communicate with individuals. I don't see a threat with our participants in the community.
Physical violence.
Physical violence as well. We are currently at Raymond, and we share space with other individuals, and I've never had reported that any of our participants, and I've been working in this field for the last 7 years, and have not had an issue with this particular population, because they're not veterans, and even if they are, we don't see that typically in a traumatic brain injury participant.
Also, their physical limitations a lot of the time would prevent that as well.
Correct.
All right, and earlier you were asked, really, they're just going to be inside the home for counseling services and then into whatever transportation vehicle they use to get there or to leave, right?
Correct. Transportation. They're not really in the community to stay out and about in the neighborhood. It's more they dropped in, they come inside, they counsel, and then the transportation picks them up and take them home. And most of the transportation, it's provided by specific Medicaid transportation. So it's it's all Medicaid services.
And are you somehow licensed to offer these services?
Our program does not require a license. I have a master's degree in social work, but it's not a requirement under the traumatic brain injury waiver. Okay. But we do have another individual, but it's not required.
Okay. And the other one, this person that sent an email was concerned that there may be some limitation on your mortgage, that it's to be solely as a residence. But that doesn't affect, I mean, that's not an impact for us. It's not a consideration for us, but it may be a consideration for you.
No, I have spoken to our attorney, and before we decided to do all of this, but I'm unaware.
Okay.
And can I just confirm you will be living at the same residence?
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you.
So there's 2 resident employees and 2 non-resident employees.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? And anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this? All right, then I'll close the public hearing. Or I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor, any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
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 And any opposed? And 1 recusal. Okay. That brings us to item number 4. And again, you can stay to the end of the meeting, or you can call the zoning administrator in the morning. Okay, that brings us to item number 4. This is a sign variance, 2555 South Road. The applicant is seeking a variance to legalize an existing monument sign not located at a functioning entrance to the site. Is there someone here for that application?
Yes, Jim Devitt.
Mr. Devon, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're going to provide tonight is true and complete to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, I do.
Okay, why don't you describe what you want to do?
Well, actually, it's something that was already done the graces of the town of Poughkeepsie about a year ago. We built and installed a pedestal, a small pedestal sign on a alternate entrance, and that was being done with the idea that Hudson Harbor was going to grant the easement for us to use that road, which of course is a private road between Price Choppers and us, as an ingress egress. And at the 11th hour, they refused to do it and tried to extort several tens of thousands of dollars from us for fees for a yearly basis in order for us to use that entrance. And we said, no, thank you. They were under the impression that to have that entrance, that was the only entrance, and that's not the case. We have a Route 9 entrance in and out of the property. So since they've chained up that entrance, it's got a knock box on it that the Arlington Fire Department has the key to, so that when they have to do a transfer from our facility, the urgent care facility, to the hospital, they can pull that down and go straight north on Route 9 by cutting through Price Choppers there to catch the light, rather than having to do the U-turn process. In the end, it's really a safety issue as far as the health of the patients that are being transferred, and that's kind of where we're at. So that was a year ago, that expired, so now we've asked for the variance for that sign that's been there for a while.
Okay. Christine, you have any questions?
I think when we were there yesterday or the other day, didn't we notice that it was not chained off any longer?
Right, it's not chained.
Yeah. Do you know anything about that?
So that
I can speak on that. We do lock it up. And when EMS makes a transfer, many times they don't relock it behind them. So it's up to us to come the next morning or something and put that back across. So it's kind of a back and forth situation from the standpoint of, we don't know exactly, when the next transfer is coming and whatnot. So we have been locking it, and then they'll unlock it, and then we'll see it, and then we'll lock it back up, and so on and so on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Art?
No questions.
Tony G?
No questions.
Diane?
No questions.
Larry?
No questions.
Phyllis?
No questions.
Tony S?
No questions.
Simona?
No question.
All right. Anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this application?
Or on the Zoom, you can raise your hand or unmute yourself. *6 if you're on a phone to unmute yourself.
All right. I'm not seeing any response, and therefore I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Then that motion carries. That brings us to item number 5. This is Anthony Cacello, 36 Carmen Drive. This is an application for a variance to allow a pool to be set back, an installation of in-ground pool to be located 8 feet from the side property line, where 15 feet is allowed, requiring a variance of 7 feet. Is there someone here from this application?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I will be recusing myself for this vote as I did the last time.
Very well. And Tony, you said you were going to recuse yourself? Okay. All right. Is there anyone here from this application?
Can I, before we go on, did you say, Paul, that someone else is recusing?
Tony G. and Phyllis are recusing.
Thank you. So that would make Tony S. and Simona voting members?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Assuming the applicant appears.
The only person that I can't identify is someone who's listed as visitor, and someone listed as KBL, and there's one person on the phone, but...
Well, let me add this. Does anybody have an objection to acting on the application without the applicant here?
No objection.
No objection.
You can't object. Lisa, is there a problem with that?
Well, technically, you don't have any sworn testimony to act upon, because typically you have the applicant come in and do that.
He did submit his diagram and his plans.
Honestly, I hadn't thought about it.
Why don't we, I'll just skip this one and come back later in the evening.
Okay.
While you think about it.
Should we see if there's anybody from the public that wanted to?
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this application? Okay.
I see somebody who did unmute themselves. Mr. Bogle, was that to speak on this application? I don't hear you. I can see that you're talking, but I do not hear you. You don't seem to be muted. No, now you're muted. Try unmuting one more time. Okay. We're not hearing you.
Still can't hear you.
Mr. Vogel, what you may want to do if we can't hear is you may want to call in. There is a call-in number if we can't get audio for you now.
I guess maybe we'll try to come back to that one then, like originally.
He may be attempting to
he may be
call.
calling right now.
From a different location.
Hello?
Yes, there we go.
Mr. Bogle?
I have to apologize. The 313 number was me, but the *6 is not working to unmute. This is Anthony Cocello.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Bogle, do you...
So we were scrambling a little bit here.
All right.
I don't know if it happened in the beginning of the meeting or not, but...
Well, okay, you're up. So why don't you state your name and we'll swear you in, then you can describe your application.
Anthony Cocello, 36 Carmen Drive.
Mr. Cocello, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're going to provide tonight is true and complete to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
All right, why don't you describe what you want to do?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. We're proposing to put a pool in 8 feet from the property line, side yard. And if you've been to the site, the surface portion, which we have the trees, underneath the ground is the septic system, and that's what we're really trying to avoid for the installation of the pool.
Okay, and on the map that you provided, it says 8 feet from, what, is that the fence that's on the map, or is that the property line, or are they both the same?
They are, graphically, we're showing the property line, the fence off the property line, but it is 8 feet from the property line.
Okay. All right, and what you have marked as SSTS area?
Yes. That would be what they refer to as the septic area or the subsurface treatment system.
Okay.
From there, if you follow it back, there's a smaller box. That would be the distribution box. And then it leads to the septic system. And then from the septic system back to the house is the pipe.
Okay. I don't have any other questions. Christine?
No questions.
Art?
Your septic is then behind the swing set, correct?
The septic is behind.
Your leach fields.
It's really it's on the the swing set is essentially on top of the septic.
All right. So it won't interfere with the pool, but how would you gain access if you had to go back there and work on that?
How would we gain access to the septic system or pool?
The septic, if you had to. I mean, is there enough access anywhere that we would have to?
Yeah, it's on the east side of the property, where there's just about 10 feet.
Okay, opposite the garage. Okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. No other questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Diane?
No questions.
Let's see. Larry?
No questions.
Phyllis?
No questions.
She's recused.
What's that?
She recused, right?
Oh, she did. Never mind then. Tony S.
No questions.
Okay, and Simona?
I just wanted to know if you had considered other dimensions or size layouts for the pool that wouldn't require variance.
This seems to be the best size pool for what we're looking for. As far as location though, this is the only practical location. It would be nice to have it in the rear yard. If we didn't have the septic or the trees, that's really the constraints that we have to deal with. The septic is the most important. The next would be the trees, to cut those down is a cost. And obviously in the back of the yard there's the topography, there's a slight hill, so we'd also have to deal with that. But as far as having the ideal situation would be not to have all that stuff and be able to put the pool in a different location. But for what we have and what we're working with, this is the best location.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this?
Mr. Bogle, were you able to call in? Oh. No, I guess he's waving us off. Okay.
Okay. All right. Anyone else from the public who wishes to comment on this? All right. Hearing nothing, I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
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 Any opposed? And 2 recusals. That brings us to item 6. Jeffrey McDonough, 14 Cathy Road. This is an application to permit the construction of an addition to an existing house to be located 27.9 feet from the property line and 8.8 feet from the side property line, requiring variances of 2.1 and 11.2 feet respectively. Is there someone here from this application?
Yeah, Mark Pinisoli from Transitional Builders and Jeff McDonough.
All right.
Do you each swear or affirm that the testimony you're going to provide tonight is true and complete to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
All right, why don't you describe what you want to do?
So basically, we're adding a second floor master bedroom, bath, dormer out the back of the existing house. Straight up, based on the size of the house. And it's basically in keeping with the neighborhood as far as the character. There's many other dormers in the area that look similar to this. It doesn't change the look of the front of the house. It's basically off the back, keeping the same ridge line in the front. It's like a big basic dormer off the back of the house.
Okay.
And yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, based on the setbacks that, you know, the house was built on, you know, it's basically 8.5 feet on the one end. I noticed in the hearing, it says 30 feet to the front of the property, because the existing's 27.9, but the dormer is past that 30 feet. It's probably more like 45 feet to the start of that dormer. And that's basically it.
So Lisa, is the variance, because it's just an addition to the house, they're looking at the front of the house from the front yard? I mean, from the front lot line?
Yeah, it's basically because the existing house is placed, you know, 8.5 feet as it was bought. We're going straight up on the end, so that I think requires the variance because the setback's 20 feet. So at some point, the town of Poughkeepsie had different setbacks, or they allowed it, you know, back in whenever the house was built, 1950.
Is it possible that it's closer to the rear yard and it's a typo, front yard versus rear yard, or what's the distance of the addition to the rear yard?
No, the existing house is 27.9 from the front yard, from the front, you know, the front setback. But the addition to that we're putting on is further back.
So typically, just so the board knows, we often don't require variances if the front of the building isn't changing and going any closer, but in this instance, Chrissy flagged it, so since we're here, we might as well. It's been noticed. You can grant it, but I would argue just as easily that it's not needed because we're not going the front of the house isn't really getting taller. It's since the dormer is going to be set back from the front, that's fine, but since we did notice it, it's not a problem to grant it.
And no part of the dormer will extend over the current ridge line, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right, then, yeah, I agree with that. And no part of the dormer extends past the side of the house either, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, then I don't have any other questions. Christine?
No questions.
Art?
No questions.
Tony G?
No questions.
Diane?
No questions.
Larry?
No questions.
Phyllis?
No questions.
Tony S?
No questions.
Simona?
No questions.
Anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this application? All right, I'm not hearing anything, so I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Then that motion carries. That brings us to item number 7. This is 191 Vassar Road. This is an application to permit the reconstruction of a 36 by 30 foot residence with an addition of an attached garage to be located 6.5 feet from the southern side property line, 8.86 feet from the northern side property line, requiring variances of 13.5 and 11.14 feet respectively. Is there anyone here for that application?
Yes, I am.
And what's your name?
What's your name, sir?
Having Lund, LUND, I represent Mr. and Mrs. Fonda, property owner.
Mr. Lund, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're going to provide tonight is true and complete to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, I do.
All right, why don't you describe this application?
Okay, so unfortunately, our client's home was destroyed by fire a little over a year ago. They settled with the insurance company in the redesign of the house in order to submit for a building permit. They asked us if we would be able to attach the garage. The previous home had a detached garage. They requested that we attach the garage, which apparently, since we're not building on the exact footprint, we are with the home, but by attaching the garage to the house, it changed the use. Actually, attaching the garage was a little less of an impact if you look at this sketch we submitted than it was when it was detached. It actually gets, the garage is about 3 feet further from the sideline property line if it's attached to the house. Apparently, if we were to build it exactly like it existed prior to the fire, and we built the detached garage, same size, same place, then I wouldn't be here talking, asking the board for consideration.
Okay. And this is a particularly odd-sized lot, right?
It is. We surveyed the house before we took it down, so the site plan, as it's drawn and I submit it for your review, the house, the rebuild is in the exact same location and size as it was prior to the fire.
Okay. Then I don't have any other questions. Christine?
No questions.
Art?
No questions.
Tony?
No questions.
Diane?
No questions.
Larry?
No questions.
Phyllis?
No questions.
Tony S?
No questions.
Simona?
No questions.
All right. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this? All right, I'm not hearing anything, and so I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Then that motion carries.
Thank you very much, everyone.
You can either wait or call the zoning administrator in the morning.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to number 8. 1998 South Road. This is a request for a height variance for a storage facility. Is there someone here from that application?
Yes, good evening. This is Jennifer Gray from Keenan Bean on behalf of the applicant.
Ms. Gray, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're going to provide tonight is true and complete to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
All right, why don't you describe what's going on?
Sure. So good evening, everyone. Again, Jennifer Gray, attorney with Keenan Bean, on behalf of the applicant Diamond Point Development. We're here today seeking 2 variances, actually 2 area variances, one for parking and one for height. So I'm trying to get the lighting appropriate here. Sorry if I'm going in and out of the shadows. These 2 variances are being sought in connection with the construction of a new climate-controlled self-storage facility at 1998 South Road, or Route 9. The property is on the east side of Route 9 in a commercial corridor across from the Poughkeepsie Galleria Mall. It's currently underutilized. It's been vacant for about 3 years. It's the former site of the Osho Japanese restaurant. And this project would bring the property back to active use on the tax rolls. Self-storage, as I'm sure you all know, is known to be one of the least impactful uses in terms of a lot of things like traffic, parking, noise, emergency services, and of course, no school impacts. There's a high demand for self-storage facilities in this region, especially the type of high-quality, first-rate, climate-controlled facilities that the applicant has a history of constructing in this area, and then also up and down the eastern seaboard. I'm joined here tonight by the applicant, Jason Summer and Aaron Summer of Diamond Point Development. They're the contract vendees for the property. I'm also here tonight with Chris Lapine, the project engineer from Chazen. We were before the planning board last month on the special permit and site plan applications that are required for this project. The planning board circulated its notice of intent to serve as lead agency for SECRA. It has not completed its environmental review yet, though, so we're not asking for a decision tonight on these variances. We are here tonight to introduce the project to you and really to solicit your comments and feedback on the plans, specifically as it relates to the height variance and the parking variance, obviously. As I mentioned, the applicant is the contract vendee for the purchase of the site, and frankly, they need to make a few important business decisions concerning the transaction in the coming weeks. They're currently in the due diligence period of the contract. So in your discussion of the application tonight, we would greatly appreciate any, your candid feedback, unfiltered comments. And I throw this out there as a suggestion that perhaps the board could even take a straw poll as to the viewpoint of its members with respect to the proposed application as it stands. So as I mentioned, we do have Jason Summer here and Chris Lapine. I'm going to turn it over to Jason from Diamond Point Development just to give a little bit of background about the company, their history with self-storage, and then he's going to turn it over to Chris Lapine to walk you through the plans and a bit about the project. Then Chris is going to turn it back to me to walk through the variances and our support for those variances. So with that, Jason, take it away.
Sure. Thanks, Jennifer. My name is Jason Summer. I am from Schenectady.
Hello.
Yes, can you hear me?
I'm sorry, I just have to swear you in. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're going to provide tonight is true and complete to the best of your knowledge?
I do. So my name is Jason Summer. My brother and I are self-storage developers, and we're from Schenectady, New York. So we're from your neck of the woods. Went to Niskuna High School, grew up there. Know Poughkeepsie very well, have relatives in Poughkeepsie. Currently, we have self-storage facilities all the way from Maine down to Georgia. And the reason why we're so successful in doing this is because we do only high-class, what we call Class A self-storage facilities. We build facilities that are clean, modern, nice, and what the consumers are looking for right now. We don't build with the chain link fences that you've seen or the doors that are visible to the street. We build very nice ones. And we do this in the communities like your community we've been able to work with by listening to you folks and listening to what you want in your community. We were at the planning board a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about screening of the property with the landscaping, some of the impervious surface. We try to listen, and we try to come back with a plan that makes sense. But self-storage is a very important use in this area in particular. I was looking today, and the Extra Space storage across the street, about a half a mile north of our property, has no ground floor self-storage units available. It is amazing that in an off-season, they have such demand that they don't even have any available, not one in the whole facility. So it to some degree proves the demand. Sorry about that. And to some degree, it proves the demand of the property. Anyway, we're very experienced in this. We only build nice facilities. We like to listen to what the community says and work with them, and hopefully make everyone happy about what we're doing in this site. It's a dilapidated building. There's fear of vagrants in the building or possible infestation. We want to make it look nice, and it's a very hard parcel, as Chris Lapine, our civil engineer, will talk about. It's a narrow triangular parcel, and to do self-storage and to do a Class A self-storage, you need a certain amount of square feet to make it make sense, or else it does not make sense. So the height variance that we're asking for is necessary. It's not a want-to-have, it's a need-to-have for us. And we're hoping that it's a 10-foot variance that we're asking for. And we're hoping that it is the character of the community. We hope it's consistent with other variances that you've permitted. And again, we hope to be a good neighbor in the community. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Chris Lapine, our civil engineer.
Good evening. Would you like me to give my oath?
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're going to provide tonight is true and complete to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Go ahead.
Thank you. First off, a happy new year to everybody on the zoning board. I'd like to kind of walk through, if I can, share my screen with you. Just kind of walk through the site plan, if you would allow me.
Yep, go ahead.
So, as Jason alluded to earlier, and you can see from the irregular shape of this existing parcel where the former Osho occupies, when you take into account the rear yard setbacks, the side yard setbacks, you kind of have this triangular area in which you're trying to construct or place and site a self-storage facility that's typically rectangular in nature. It's not trapezoidal, it's not, triangular. So you really have to work within the confines of the areas in terms of minimizing any impacts to the setbacks, and likewise trying to minimize the impacts to the overall footprint impervious area. The site, as noted, is 2.03 acres, and it's located it's located within the general highway business district, but it's also requires a special use permit as well from the planning board for its contemplated use. The access to the site, which we currently have shown, was intended to utilize the existing right-in along Route 9 and the existing right turnout also along Route 9. Based upon some feedback we had from the planning board, we were asked to if we'd be willing to entertain the elimination of this 26-foot wide access path for a portion of it. Everybody realizes there's a certain length necessary for fire protection, but eliminating that and then utilizing the existing point of ingress for both egress and ingress. And that's something we've taken into consideration, and we actually think that would be for the betterment of this project, as it would further help reduce the overall site impervious area associated with this project. Although we're here before you this evening for a height variance, we're here for a height variance in the sense that we're, as Jason stated, we're trying to make this project financially viable. And by doing so, we thought it would have less of an impact on the overall project site if we focused on decreasing the overall site impervious area. You currently have a site impervious area that's about 52,400 square feet. We've reduced this by 49,500 square feet. The elimination of this portion of the driveway as asked for by the planning board would further have another significant reduction of about 3,700 square feet. So all in all, we have the opportunity to, by going 4 stories, reducing the overall impervious for the site by 6,000 square feet. You currently have that kind of sea of pavement with a rooftop sitting in the middle without any landscaping in that area. And we believe utilizing the opportunity to go 4 stories and minimizing the overall footprint and impervious area will allow us to incorporate that landscaping that's currently lacking there. As also discussed for this potential variance, in which Jennifer will go into more detail, we are currently proposing 9 parking spaces for this use. We also have 2 loading areas associated for this use. Generally speaking, and you'll see in probably another month or so, there's another self-storage facility in the town of Poughkeepsie being proposed at this time, Guardian Self-Storage. Similar to Jason and Aaron, they've been operating these such businesses for a number of years. And based upon both of their track records, they've both determined that the amount of parking necessary to service this type of a business is greatly reduced from what the zoning requires for its use. This is not a high turnover use, kind of like people coming in and out of a Dunkin' Donuts or a grocery store. These types of facilities typically see maybe most 12 to 14 people throughout the course of an 8 to 9 hour day. So when you look at that in terms of parking, you roughly have about 2 cars per hour that are visiting these sites. It would be a disservice to us to provide parking in accordance with the zoning requirements, one that would increase the overall impervious area of the site and also generate unnecessary runoff, but 2, take away from the opportunity to provide some landscaping to further screen and green this site. At this point in time, I think I've kind of given you an overview of what's dictated the layout that we've presented to you, and I'm going to have Jennifer follow up and substantiate the zoning variance application that's before you for both the height variance and the parking.
All right, thank you, Chris. That was a helpful overview. So if it's okay with the board, I'm going to start with the parking variance. As you heard from Chris, and I think as we all know, self-storage facilities are widely known to be low generators of traffic and parking. We noted that in the county planning's comment letter that we received last week, they even acknowledged the low traffic use, quote unquote, merits a reduction in the required parking. So I think it's a pretty well-known phenomenon for self-storage facilities. We do require 45 spaces as per the town code. And as Chris mentioned, we're proposing 9. That includes a handicap spot and then plus the additional 2 loading spaces. You heard a little bit about the applicant's experience with other self-storage facilities, both in the area and outside of New York State. We put together 4 examples of self-storage facilities that the applicant has constructed elsewhere, just to give you an idea of the type of demand and the number of spaces that are in use at these other facilities. So, for example, in Fayetteville, Georgia, there's a life storage, self-storage facility that's larger than our what we're proposing. We're proposing a self-storage facility of about 88,000 square feet with 9 spaces. They're at 107,000 square feet and they have 6 spaces. In Marietta, Georgia, they have 104,000 square feet with 9 spaces. Similarly, 105,000 square feet in Schenectady with 11 spaces. And then lastly, in Portland, Maine, a 90,000 square foot facility with 6 spaces. And at each of these facilities, there's no issue with finding an available parking spot. They operate very efficiently, and there's plenty of parking at each of these facilities. Part of this is, the applicant knows their own business. Obviously, it would be against our best interest to provide an insufficient number of parking spaces for the efficient operation of the structure. So I think when you consider that and you consider the fact that the lesser amount of parking spaces eliminates the need for additional impervious surface coverage at the site, the balancing the benefit to the applicant against any possible detriment to the community, we think that the scales tip in favor of granting the parking variance here. I'll move on to the height variance next. With respect to the height variance, 3 stories and 45 feet is permitted in this district. We're in the highway business district. And we're proposing 4 stories at 55 feet, so 10 extra feet. We have received comment memos from county planning as well as town staff and consultants regarding height of the proposed building, specifically as it relates to the sloped nature of the lot and its proximity to Route 9, the building's proximity to Route 9. Respectfully, we don't believe that the proposed height of the structure is out of character for this area. As I mentioned, it's obviously a robust commercial area across from the Poughkeepsie Galleria Mall, next to a Chili's restaurant and a Walgreens, very commercialized area. And as we'll review, the board has granted height variances in similar circumstances. We did submit in our written materials a matrix of sorts, sort of a presentation that goes through some of those comparable properties. And Erin, I don't know, do you have the presentation handy to put that up on the screen? Thank you so much. So you'll see on the screen, this was submitted with our application materials, and this is a matrix that shows 3 comparable properties. Our location, the subject property, is shown in the left-hand column that's sort of highlighted in gray. That's 1998 South Road. You'll see we're proposing about 88,000 square feet, 700 units at 4 stories, and we're adjacent to commercial properties. You'll note in the little aerial, if you can see it, it's a little small, but you'll note in that aerial there, you can see the shape of the property highlighted in red, and we really have an irregularly shaped lot here. It's a triangular shaped lot, so the longest portion of the lot is really at our frontage with Route 9, and we don't have much depth. So it kind of limits our ability to develop out, which, as Jason referenced earlier in his comments, the need to build up to accommodate for that. You'll see the property labeled Property 1 is the extra space self-storage facility that was referenced in the comments earlier. That's at 2169 South Road, and it's larger than our facility. It's at 115,000 square feet with more units, 831 units. And they were granted a variance for 4 stories. They are adjacent to a residential neighborhood. So behind that lot is a residential neighborhood. You'll see Aaron moving his cursor there behind the lot. And you also note that this property, in addition to the Hyatt Place property right next door to it, that we'll get to next, are more like traditionally shaped lots. So they did have a little bit more flexibility there. The other thing to keep in mind here is both this property and the Hyatt Place property are also sloped up from Route 9, similar to the subject property. The building itself for each of these is set back a little farther than the subject when what we're proposing. It's set back a little bit farther from Route 9, but nonetheless, you still do have that slope up from Route 9 for extra space and for the Hyatt Place property, similar to the subject property. So yeah, as I mentioned, moving on to Property 2, Hyatt Place is right next door to extra space. You probably remember those 2 applications coming in to the board for their height variances at 4 stories, the same as we're proposing. And then the last one is the Hampton Inn, which is a little further north up Route 9. And again, it is adjacent to a residential neighborhood, a similarly sized structure to ours at 85,000 square feet. They received a variance for 5 stories. They are set back further from Route 9, but they did receive a variance for 5 stories. So we thought these were important, precedents that were important for the zoning board to be aware of, to keep in mind as you are considering our variance application. Before I conclude the presentation, I just want to mention a couple of points with respect to the height variance that I think are important to keep in mind. One is the irregular nature of the shape of the lot that we've mentioned, that triangular shape, which makes poses some development constraints that causes the facility the need to build up instead of out, necessitating the height variance. We obviously have minimal flexibility to go out, so we must go up in order to get the square footage needed in order to make the project financially viable. The second is the point that we alluded to, that there's no residential areas adjacent to this property. It's in a highly commercialized area of Route 9 across from the mall. The third point is the architecture, and we have some renderings which we'll put up in a second. But the architecture that's being proposed here, it's very attractive. You typically think of a self-storage. Oh, thank you. So there's some of the architecture there. It's very different than the self-storage facilities from many years ago. You think of a single-story row of garages with metal doors. The buildings now are quite attractive in these high-quality, climate-controlled facilities. And I think a key thing to keep in mind here too is the varied roof line. So we're not looking for 55 feet across the entire roof line. There is some variation here that breaks up the facade of the building, makes it more visually attractive, and there's no, the massing of the building is broken up.
Yeah, and Jennifer, if I could just interrupt you there for a moment.
Thank you, Chris.
With the different massing is, in accordance with the zoning code in this particular business district, is to give it the feel of a variety of storefronts along here. And I believe the different textures of materials, different colors, various awnings proposed, and placement of the windows certainly delivers on the intent of what the zoning was and why this architecture is featured as is.
Thank you for that, Chris. And the last point I want to make is with respect to vegetative screening. So there's currently some vegetative screening located toward the south of the site. I'm sorry, maybe that's the north. Chris, maybe you can orient me correctly.
You are correct. To the north of the site, the northwest corner of the site.
The northwest, thank you.
The vicinity of the Chestnut Plaza entrance.
Yes, so there's some existing screening there now, and what the applicant is proposing is to enhance that screening on that side of the building as well as in the front of the building and in the rear, frankly. I mean, that isn't relevant to the views from Route 9, but the applicant is proposing a rather robust landscape plan that we're in the process of fine-tuning. So I think both the existing and the proposed vegetative screening will help to soften the views of the building. So with that, I think I'll conclude our presentation and open up to the board for any questions. I do also want to apologize for my lighting. I don't know what's happening tonight, but I feel like I'm in shadows. So I apologize if you can barely see me.
Jennifer, if I could just add one other thing, and perhaps Jason, if you want to join me as well with comments. As Jennifer stated, there was a concern in terms of the viewport of this site, which was brought up by the planning board as it relates from the intersection of Old Post Road and Route 9. And the image I have before you kind of gives you a general depiction of what that would possibly be with the additional enhancements, as Jennifer talked about, with regards to the additional landscaping as you work your way from north to south along our front property line. The elimination of that access drive certainly gives us the opportunity to further enhance the landscaping here. Also along the north side of the building, which is behind some of the existing vegetation here at Chestnut Plaza, we are looking to use coniferous type vegetation, 20-foot high spruce trees when they're planted initially. We're not coming in here with your 8 to 10 foot type size trees. So right off the bat, they're going to provide some instant screening to help alleviate the concerns associated with the height variance being requested at this time. And as we said, this is an artistic rendering, and we are going to fine-tune this particular image here and do our best to provide additional screening beyond what is shown here.
All right, well, thank you very much. I have a couple questions. Do you have a facility that you've done nearby?
The nearest one we are currently building right now, and it's not much to look at, it would be in Schenectady. It's the foundation is in and the walls are in, so it's nothing really aesthetically nice to look at. Our one in Portland, Maine is about 95% done, and we'll be delivering next month. We could certainly send you images of that. We have our website, which you can look up at diamondpointdevelopment.com, and it shows our last 5 or 6 different projects, and it's got pictures of the exterior and the interior, and you certainly could take a look through that if you're interested in seeing those.
Okay, and tell me, is it possible for you to do a rendering of the facility on the site from Route 9, so that we can get an idea really what it would look like, what the impact, the visual impact would be if the variance was approved?
When you say, do you mean directly in front of the facility, or do you mean for angled? We have one angled that might work. Aaron, do you have that you could show? The angled one with the ghost trees there that we could show everyone? So that's a little closer up. I don't know if that's what you're looking for, sir.
That's exactly what I'm looking for, but I'd like it from in a couple different, from directly in front and north and south.
Okay, we can put something together. Here's one with ghost trees on it. So this is what it would look like if there were no trees there, or if the trees were. So yes is the answer. We can, and this is just for illustrative purposes. You know, there's Chris and I were talking. There's a birch tree there. There's no real, probably not going to be a birch tree there in the picture. We have to do a better job of representing the trees there. But this is an idea of what it's going to look like from that north to southeast vantage.
Yeah, so that's...
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly going to take advantage of the greening opportunity that's afforded by eliminating the right turn out.
Okay. Christine, do you have any comments?
No, I also would be curious to see what it would look like with the screening on, you know, from other angles of the building, because the elevation of the property is already rather high, and the fact that it's so, you know, close to the road, it's not set back as much as the other examples that you gave. That's just a concern. That's all.
Art?
I do. My first question is that years ago, when we had the Oakwood Commons built, and he requested a higher building height, we asked him to fly balloons, you know, like a tethered weather balloon, to give us an idea of what the height would look like from the ground. Is that something you'd be willing to do on a not so windy day, if we could arrange something? It gives you a better visual idea of, you know, where the roof line is actually going to be, rather than try to guess.
Yeah, I don't see why not. I've never done that before, but sure, that sounds like a reasonable request. You know, just you know, it is literally 10 feet higher than what you're asking for, so than what is allowable by code. Right. So you know, you kind of put that into context, and if you look at the extra space that's about a half a mile up the street on the west side, that is about the same height as what we're asking.
But that one is a lot lower to Route 9. You haven't got the grade that you have on this one that you're looking at. How high is Osho? Do you know what the height of that to the peak is?
The height. Are you talking about the surface grade compared to Route 9?
The height to the peak of Osho. You know how high that is from the surface?
Yeah, I don't know the exact height. I know it is a 2-story building.
Okay.
It is 2-story, and it's approximately 18 feet above grade from the Route 9 corridor. We've actually, it's a minimum of 204.5. We've dropped our finished floor down to 202. We're concerned about dropping it any further due to all the rock on site. We certainly looked at the opportunity of potentially even placing a story below grade. But we're trying to weigh the environmental impacts associated with blasting versus going vertical.
Okay. Just a couple more, and I apologize. I don't really apologize, but...
you don't have to.
Will there be any outdoor vehicle storage at all? Because
absolutely not.
Some of these places do have, you know, RVs, boats, etc.
Absolutely not.
Okay, so that's off the table, okay? Question. You probably can't see it, but in your package that you gave us, you have the first page is the first color page is the property summary with an aerial view of the property now. I don't know if you can see if I held it up, but it's in your binder that you gave us, and it's probably the about the 5th page.
Variable property summary?
Yes, that's it.
Yes.
Yep. So if I look at this, and I may be totally wet here, but to the north of you, toward Bed Bath & Beyond, you have that big parking area that's paved.
Yes.
That's kind of tucked into the tree line. Is it not possible to move the building back in there to even hide it more than your 20-foot trees would hide?
We have tucked it more into there without encroaching beyond the side yard setback.
So you're going to go up into that area somewhat?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And my other question was, and we may be ahead of the game on this one, but the lighting along the building, as the gentleman knows that works for Chazen, I guess it is.
Yes.
We're not real fond of overhead perimeter lighting, if you will. If you looked at the old Golden Corral, they had the lights that surrounded the top of the building, those yellow fluorescents.
Yeah,
you're not planning anything like that, correct?
No, that's not
not allowed.
That's being contemplated for this.
It's not anything that we've done for any of our other properties either.
Good. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm done. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Tony G.
I just have one comment. It's more to echo Christine's comments. That being above ground, I would be very interested in the rendering that you could produce just to see what that looked like, because it's so close to the road, and because we're looking at a variance that's above that. I think several of us would be interested to see what that would visually look like, so we could digest it a little bit more. That's all I have.
Okay. Diane?
I want to commend planning for encouraging the elimination of the the north end exit. I put myself through college working there in the bar downstairs, and coming out at 3 a.m. and on a winter night and trying to pull out of there was never easy. So great idea. But my one question, which will have something to do with parking really, more so than height. Height, you know, we need a visual, I think, to really judge that. But is there any reason why, especially for emergency and fire issues, have you approached accessing the lot north of you, the mall, the Walgreens, you know,
the
whatever?
Chestnut Plaza site.
Yes. Is there any reason why you can't continue your road to the back of the property and see about permitting that? So for, even if it's just an emergency exit, as opposed to saving some of the front for emergencies?
Yeah, if I could share my screen one more time. If you can see my site plan again. There's a bit of an elevation challenge as it occurs between the lot to the north and our lot. It's approximately about a 14-foot elevation change, which, based on the existing topography up here, wouldn't produce a slope that's conducive in terms of emergency access. There's a couple of other dilemmas here as well. This section of the adjoining property has an existing retaining wall on it as well. The easement for the board, if you're, just to kind of give you an update, was there's an easement slightly to the east, not slightly to the east, but to the east of this property corner here that would give future access to the entire, both parcels in the future. The intent was to provide an access point for the benefit of both parcels that was a bit more conducive in terms of slope. And the planning board had some foresight back in 2004, and they contemplated that, and there is a future access point. As I said, it's probably a little over 100 feet away, maybe 125 feet from this particular corner here. The other thing is, even if we were to make this connection from this portion of the road out, the fire code still requires that the fire company have access to within 150 feet of wherever there's a dead end for a fire access road. Now that distance can be increased to 300 feet if the building is sprinklered. So this particular location of the access drive in the rear, and also cutting this particular access drive here in the front, would allow us to meet the 300-foot requirement of coverage on the building. Even by extending the lane in the rear to the adjoining property, we would still need to extend this front portion of the access drive in order to provide that 300 foot of coverage. Does that help?
Yes. And where would the 300 feet be?
The 300 feet, you would extend this road here.
Right.
And we would have to connect to the adjoining property. We wouldn't have a choice.
Right. But out front.
We're probably, if you can look at where the loading dock area is right here.
Mm-hmm.
If you draw a line that continues perpendicular to Route 9, it would probably be about right here.
Okay. And so this, everything to the west, to the north of that could be planted.
Yes, and that's what our intentions are, that Jason was speaking to earlier, was utilizing this impervious area and providing some additional screening that's otherwise not shown currently on the site plan that was submitted to the planning board.
Okay. No more questions.
Larry?
Yeah, I have nothing right now.
Phyllis? Phyllis? Tony S?
No questions.
Simona?
No questions.
And if you could unshare your screen?
Sure.
Thanks. Phyllis?
Sorry, I was muted. I would just piggyback Art's request for a balloon so we could check the height. And the building is such a unique shape, I'm sure, to match the uniqueness of the lot. If they could put some stakes out there to give us a real physical sense of what the size of this project is going to be, that would be great. I don't know if that's possible. No further questions.
Okay. Is that something you can accommodate?
Yeah, we can give you the approximate corners of where this is, and kind of. I'm just thinking out loud how we can. Maybe we might have to put some iron stakes in the ground. Obviously, wooden stakes aren't going to be able to accommodate through the pavement, and I think spray painting is a bit difficult in this weather condition. So, let us see what we can do to provide you some sort of visible stakes.
All right, and we can pick a day or a time period. I mean, it doesn't have to be up there for 2 months. Something that, you know, we can all take a look at and you guys can figure out.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If there are any other comments or concerns or anything else that we can address tonight, we're happy to do so. Any other questions we can answer. As I mentioned at the top of the presentation, the applicant does have some difficult business decisions to make in the coming weeks with respect to the due diligence period of their contract. So this is the height variance and the parking variance are really the linchpins here. So without those approvals, the project, you know, it really can't go forward. We heard you with respect to providing renderings with respect to a view directly from Route 9 and from the north and from the south. We can certainly accommodate that and show a little bit more clearly where the screening is going to be, vegetative screening. We also heard you with respect to the balloon test request and the staking. We will accommodate those. But if there's any other comments, questions, Jason, if you have any other comments you'd like to provide to the board, this is the opportunity.
No, we just thank you all for listening to us, and we again want to accommodate you. We want this to be a project that you want to have in your community, that you're interested to have in your community, that you think will provide a benefit, that you think that will be aesthetically pleasing. That's what we're shooting for. So your comments are heard. We'll come back and take a look at it. And it seems like the most important comment is the view from the street. And we'll take a look at some screening, and we'll see if it's something that you find suitable for your community. Thank you.
Is there any particular locations where you'd like us to take the pictures from as it relates to the balloon?
Well, actually, I thought you would set up the balloons and we would actually visit it, but is that right in mine, Art?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But, you know, as far as the photos, you think of something like the turnaround in front of the Galleria, looking at that site, you know, that little jug handle?
All the way, I'd like to see the entire impact northbound, southbound on Route 9, right, from a couple hundred feet either way.
Yeah. Does this view help at all, folks? Or
That's pretty good, but again, I'd like to see it assuming
where the blue car is, looking at it from
the other straight on from the
right,
street,
and then farther south.
same view from the south going north?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, you know, incorporating what kind of screening that you think you can put. I guess those are ghost trees there, but.
Yeah, I mean, that a lot of this is existing vegetation from the neighbor's lot.
Okay.
So not all of it, but some of it is on this area. So we would be adding more towards the front of the building than we would to the side, because again, the side is already screened.
And you know what else might be helpful? If you showed a rendering that complied with zoning, and then what you'd like to get approved, so we can see the difference between what the impact is between what's allowed and what you're requesting. That sound reasonable?
Maybe we could draw a line on it. We don't have site plans for a 3-story building.
Okay, so just you know, if you could just draw a line.
I understand what you're saying, though. You'd like to see what 10 feet is on this building, right? So makes sense. Makes complete sense.
Can I ask?
Are you retaining that railing out front? The would it be that kind of? Is that your plan for the barrier?
That particular railing may no longer be necessary. You know, we've tried to put together a quick rendering for this meeting, but because there's no parking along there and further access drive along the remainder of the property, it's highly unlikely that barrier will be necessary.
Yeah, that'd be good. Okay.
Quick question for Jason. I mean, if after doing the renderings and the balloon test, if there's still concern about the mass on that side, you know, the county had suggested perhaps recessing the upper floor or something like that. Have you explored other minor configuration changes to the building that could?
Yeah,
we have.
Yeah. You know, Mike,
go ahead, Chris.
We have, and we upon receipt of the county's comments, we worked pretty diligently, the entire team, through Thursday evening into early Friday morning, and we're back at 8 a.m. on Friday. And I'd like to share with you kind of a sketch as to what we were looking at here. The dotted area here, the dashed area, is the configuration of the existing building as proposed at 4 stories.
We're not seeing it. We're not seeing your screen, Chris.
Oh, I should probably share it with you.
Might help a little bit.
Is it visible now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So the dashed area on our plan shows the building as we proposed it in the variance application before you for the 4-story. We took the liberty of eliminating the access drive on this particular plan, and what we did was we didn't want to increase, once again, the impervious area on the site. We still wanted to end up with an overall decrease. So we took whatever impervious area we were eliminating from this access drive, and then we painted it alongside the different portions of this building. So you've got this area that's outside of the building here, this area here, here, and a little bit along the front and to the south. We took away about 3,700 square feet, as I just said earlier in the presentation, and we put that on the footprint. Realize, though, by adding that to the footprint, we end up with a ground floor area of about 26,000 square feet. That takes us up to 29%, as opposed to the 25% maximum footprint coverage. We would then step the building along the front of it. In this particular layout, it's about a 60-foot step back from the front of the building, and the remainder of it would be 4 stories in order to hit that kind of 88,000 square foot mark. This particular plan came out to about 88,272. The plan before you is 88,300 square feet. So we have taken that opportunity to look at that.
All right. Without beating a dead horse tonight, Chris, I just wanted to, I'm glad that you looked at it, and I think it's good that there's potentially an option, because just in case, you know, for your own sake and for Jason and Aaron, right? Yeah. If later on, you know, looking at the massing and it seems like a little too much from Route 9, it's good to know that there is perhaps another option that works for you and it might also work for the community.
So Jason,
I think the thing to keep in mind too, though, it will require an additional variance, so we will still need the height variance, right, for that rear portion of the building, and then we would also need the coverage variance, and obviously still the parking variance. So it would add a variance to the list of those that are necessary. I just want to make sure that that's understood and clear.
But does that mean that the blue section is only going to be 3 stories?
The blue section is only 3 stories, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
So from the street, it would really look as a 3-story building.
Less impact, of course.
Yeah, I mean, is this something that you may want to take a look at in terms of elevation for the next meeting as well? So.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I like that one much better myself, but I don't know.
Yeah.
There's the board.
There's a fair amount of nodding here. I know you can't see that on the Zoom, but. Yeah.
I'll stop sharing so I can see it. What I think we should do, and as I said, we kind of jumped and started on this Thursday evening. What I think we should do is kind of do a little bit more of a balance between trying to minimize the footprint coverage and balancing the setback from the front of the building. We may be able to, reduce the footprint coverage by maybe 2 percentage points simply by extending this red line about another 10 feet or so along the front, or 15 feet, which still gives us an adequate setback from the frontage, but also reducing the need for the footprint coverage.
Sounds good to me.
I think it may be helpful to go around the board at this point and get, if they're willing, or if any of the board members want to speak up. One of the other things, with the granting of the variance versus the, the 4-story height versus the 3-story height, and if you need an extra variance for footprint coverage, I don't know if you have the possibility to shift the building back like 5 feet so that the massing, and I don't know that that would make a difference. But, I mean, there are options, I think, for the board to consider. It seems like most of the board members, from the nodding that we couldn't really see here on Zoom, prefer a slightly step back, but I think it might be helpful for the board. I know Jennifer had asked for a straw poll. I don't know if any of the board members are willing to do that, but it might give the applicant some guidance as to whether this is a variance that might ultimately be granted, either the parking or the height variance, or whether there's something else, and whether they would be opposed to a footprint coverage variance or some other variance to have less massing on the street.
Yeah, so I think the parking issue is sort of a business decision. I don't know that anyone really has a problem with that. And the coverage issue, it seems to me, if I understand everything, that anything you do is going to increase or decrease the impermeable coverage that's there now. So I'm not so sure anybody would have a concern about granting a variance for that, so long as it's a decrease from what currently exists. And I think that from everything I heard and understand is that our real concern is the impact, the visual impact of the 4th story from Route 9. So does anyone disagree with that?
I totally agree.
I agree.
Okay. Diane?
I agree.
Okay. Larry?
Yeah, except that visual impact of what it currently looks like.
Right. Well, yeah, that's true too. Okay, so is that helpful?
Extremely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Then, is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this application? You'd like to comment? Okay, come on up. State your name for the record. You're still under oath.
It's Michelle Squires. We just spent a whole lot of time. I mean, I appreciate what they want to do, but we just spent a whole lot of time on aesthetics, and I am overwhelmed by the amount of attention that we can place on on what things look like, and I appreciate that. I mean, I'm an artist. I appreciate what things look like. But of course, where my mind goes to is, can we put the same attention on what I was discussing and what we were talking about before, which is health and safety. And that's all I have to say. I have no words about this at all. And because there were certain questions posed about the TCA, I venture to say that people did not review the email that I sent that had to do with explaining the TCA Act and how town municipalities are in fact responsible for health and safety, as they would be for garages, swimming pools, additions, dog barking, poison ivy in the right of way, tobacco smoke. I have no words about how we're neglecting this other piece. And because Tony G is new, are you new with the ZBA? I don't think that I didn't address my email correcting the record to you because I didn't know you beforehand. And I highlighted what the law is that nobody seems to be referring to. So I'd like to be able to give this to you. Please, you can share it with the rest of the board, but I don't think before this important vote on the Verizon variance, if we don't know what the TCA Act really spoke about, and I would love to read it for record, but I'm just going to give it to you, Tony, and please, please read it and you'll see what I'm talking about, okay? Thank you again. Thank you, everybody on the board.
Okay. Anyone else from the public who wishes to comment on this application? All right. Because we can't vote on this, I'll move to adjourn. And you're looking for a March adjournment?
Yeah, I was thinking March because we're not going to be able to do anything until you go back. I mean, the planning board's going to be the lead agency, right? So, I mean, Jennifer, do you think March is okay?
I think that sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
All right, but you'll have contact with us, and perhaps, we can see those drawings and those illustrations.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have some homework to do to provide you, the renderings and arrange for the staking, et cetera. So I think March sounds reasonable for coming back to this board.
All right, then I'll move to adjourn this application until March, is it 14th?
14th, yeah.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
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 The motion, any opposed? Motion's carried.
I only have one thing, is if Mike, if you can share with us the date when the zoning board would like to come out to the site to see the footprint staked out in the balloon.
If you reach out to Mike or Chrissy or Sonia, I think they'll
we'll work with you, Chris. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay. And I'd like to move to take a 16-minute break.
16, 15?
16.
16?
Yeah, come back at 8.
Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. 16.
5 minutes?
5? Could it be 5? I'm just thinking about dinner.
All right, all right.
What do we have? Bring it in.
Yeah, that's
All right, so I'll move for a 5-minute adjournment.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
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 Any opposed? And that carries.
See you in 5.
Paul does a good job with that.
Phyllis, can you mute yourself?
Guess not.
I'm sorry, Paul, I just came back upstairs.
All right. As soon as Mike gets back, we'll reconvene. Move to reopen the public hearing. Well, the meeting, it's 8:21. It appears everyone's back. So this will bring us to the top of the agenda. Item number 2, Verizon Wireless, 911 Raymond Avenue. Anybody have any considerations or comments about this one?
Mr. Chair, I had submitted a draft resolution for the board's consideration, and I omitted to include in that resolution one sentence that said that the applicant and the town had agreed that the FCC shot clock for the matter, which technically expired on December 7th, would be extended through and including today. So I propose that change, should the board be so inclined to grant the motion.
All right. In that case, I don't have to read the entire resolution, do I? Okay. And I understand, Tony G., you're going to recuse yourself on this one? Okay. So that puts, let's see, I guess that puts Simona up as a voting member on this one. Simona, are you there?
Nobody's there.
Huh? Simona? She must have thought that there was a 16-minute.
Yeah, she went with the first suggestion.
Yeah.
Maybe Tony S.
All right, then Tony S., you can vote on this one. Okay. Anyone else have any comments on this one from the board? Diane?
No, I'm not. No.
Okay. Phyllis? You're muted.
I don't have any other questions, Paul.
Okay. Any concerns?
No.
Okay. And Tony S.?
Nothing additional, no.
Okay. In that case, I move that the ZBA determine that this is an unlisted action appropriate for uncoordinated review and declare itself to be the lead agency.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All those in favor signify by aye.
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 And there's one recusal. And I move that the ZBA determine that the action will not have a significant adverse effect on the environment for the reasons set forth in the determination of non-significant for this action. And everyone has a copy of the notice of determination of non-significance, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. So I make that motion.
Second.
All right. Any discussion on that? All right. All those in favor signify by aye.
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 All right. Any opposed? Then that motion carries. And in that case, there's a draft resolution approving the project based upon a number of things, mostly need, site selection, and visual. So everyone's had an opportunity to read that, and that would approve the variance application. All those in favor of granting this variance application
With the amendment that Lisa made.
It's what?
With the amendment that Lisa.
With the amendment proposed, waiving the time limit.
And Mr. Chair, there was also a discussion with the applicant and Mr. Musso about any conditions. I think it was the consensus of the board that they were going to leave those to the discretion of the planning board and not put any on. Just confirming that there are no conditions that the CBA wants to add.
Unless, what do you feel about the painting? Anyone concerned about that?
I don't have any.
I think leave it. The painting, it's going to peel, and what's the maintenance of it going to be? I don't know if the painting really adds anything. And I think planning should leave it on plannings.
You got to leave the planning board something to do on this one.
All right. In that case, all those in favor signify by aye.
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 Are there any opposed? And there's one recusal, so that motion's granted. That brings us to item number, well, let's see, KBL is here. Okay. Colin Baker, are you here from Item number 3, Ms. Baker.
Yes, I am.
Okay, then we'll take that one. We'll take that one next because you're here. This is a special use permit to allow a business in a home occupation. Anybody have any concerns about this one? I think that she satisfied everything about parking.
Yes.
There was a concern from the neighbor about any adverse effect from the clientele. That doesn't seem to be a real problem. I think she satisfied the document. There's only 2 non-resident employees. I don't think that the hours.
Nope, the hours are like 9 to 5 with maybe something on periodic Sunday.
And then it is, I did the calculations, it's less than 25% of the building's habitable space devoted based upon the application that she submitted. And she said no more than 5 clients, so. And satisfied the parking. So I think it satisfied all the criterion. And so I would move to grant this special use permit. In fact, Christine, why don't you move?
Well, I just want to point out, it's an unlisted action, so we should
that's right,
probably
so we have to do that
give it a
first.
neg deck. I don't have this part 2 and 3 prepared, but.
I think. I thought I printed. Maybe I printed out for something else.
No, we can just approve the part 2 and 3 as a neg deck, and I'll reply to you.
Okay. So in that case, I move that the ZBA determine that this is an unlisted action appropriate for uncoordinated review and declare itself to be lead agency.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. 7-0. And Tony, I'm sorry, Tony asked you're voting on this one also, because Larry recused himself.
Right.
Okay. And I move based upon the short EAF and make a negative declaration of impact.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that carries with 1 recusal. And now, Christine, if you don't mind making a motion.
Okay. I move to approve the request for a special use permit set forth in item number 3. This decision is based on a review of the application, testimony of the applicant, testimony gathered during the public hearing, results of site visits by board members, and the staff report, and that it meets the criteria set forth in the town code. So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that motion carries with 1 recusal. That brings us to item number 4, 2555 South Road, seeking a variance to legalize an existing monument sign not located in a functioning entrance of the site. So this is an unlisted action, but does anyone have any concerns about this one? It's been there, doesn't seem to have much impact on anything.
Barely noticeable.
Okay. So I move that the ZBA determine that this is an unlisted action appropriate for uncoordinated review and declare itself to be lead agency.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, then that motion carries. And yeah, okay. And so based upon the short EAF, I move that determination of no or negative significance.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, then that motion carries. Now, regarding the variance itself, there is a staff report. Well, I'm not recommending anything, I think, but I don't see that it had much impact. It exists there. If they had gotten the right of way, they wouldn't even need a variance. So I don't see that there's much of an impact. And so, all right, you want to do this motion?
Sure. I move that the board approve the request for an area variance set forth in item 4. This decision is based on a review of the application, testimony of the applicant, testimony offered in the public hearings, and results of site visits by board members. In approving this variance, the board adopts as findings those found by the chair and as well as the staff report.
Staff report.
Staff report. I said staff report.
I think so. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Oh, never mind.
Chair and staff report.
Okay. Yeah, any comments? All right. All those in favor signify by aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Then that motion carries. Okay. That brings us to item number 5, 36 Carmen Drive, Anthony Cocello. This is a variance for a pool to be located 8 feet from the side property line, requiring a variance of 7 feet. Okay. Any comments on this one?
No, I think it's well placed in the yard.
Okay. Anybody? No one has any concerns?
Nope. I think we're okay.
All right. Then I would offer these findings. Whether an undesirable change would produce in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the grant.
What?
I muted Larry.
Okay, thanks. An detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the variance. It's consistent with other properties in the neighborhood. It's a fenced-in yard. I don't see that it has any impact at all on the neighborhood. Whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance based upon the position of the septic system, trees, and the topography of the backyard, I don't see that he has any alternatives other than an area variance. And whether the requested area variance is substantial. Perhaps mathematically, but I think that based upon the topography and actual siting of the pool, that it has a limited impact. Whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions of the neighborhood or district, there's no evidence that will have any physical or environmental impact. And whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, it certainly was, but that's not a reason to deny the application, and I would offer those findings.
Second.
Okay.
We have 2 recusals, Phyllis and Tony G.
Yeah.
Right? So it's both Tony S. and Simona are voting.
Okay. Diane, do you mind making this motion?
I move that the board approve the request for an area variance set forth in item number 5. This decision is based on a review of the application, testimony of the applicant, testimony offered in the public hearing, and result of site visits by the board members. In approving this variance, the board adopts the findings as set forth by the chair. So move.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor signify by aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and 2 recusals. That brings us to item number 6, 14 Kathy Road. This is a variance to permit the construction of an addition to the existing house to be located 27.9 feet from the property line, 8.8 feet from the sideline, requiring variances of 2.1 and 11.2 feet respectively. All right, so this was just an addition of a dormer, and in fact had no impact on the front lot line and had no impact on the side lot line because it follows the side of the house. All right, anybody have any concerns about this one?
No.
Okay, then let me offer these findings. Whether an undesirable change will produce in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the variance. This project is consistent with other properties in the neighborhood and has no additional impact on the neighborhood. Whether the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance based upon the desire of the applicant for the addition and the siting of the house. There's no other way for the applicant to get this without an area variance. Whether the requested area variance is substantial, mathematically, the side lot one is, except that it's no closer to the side lot than the existing house. And so practically, it's not substantial. Whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district, there's no evidence that will have any physical or environmental impact. And whether the alleged difficulty was self-created. It was, but that's not a reason to deny the application, and I would offer those findings.
Second.
Let's see, who else? Phyllis, do you mind doing this motion?
Not at all. I move that the board approve the request for an area variance set forth in item number 6. This decision is based on a review of the application, testimony of the applicant, testimony offered in the public hearing, and results of site visits by board members. In approving this variance, the board adopts the finding as set forth by the chair. So move.
Second.
All right, any discussion on this one? All right, all those in favor signify by aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Then that motion carries. That brings us to item number 7. This is a request for a variance for a side yard setback of 20 feet to permit the reconstruction of a 36 by 30 foot residence and the addition of an attached garage to be located 6.5 feet from the southern side property line and 8.86 feet from the northern side property line, requiring variances of 13.5 and 11.1 feet respectively. Any concerns about this one? Okay, so it seems that, in fact, it's a very narrow lot. The house is going in the same spot that the pre-existing one that burned down was, and in fact, the garage, the attached garage, is now farther away from the side lot line than the original unattached garage. So I would offer these findings. Whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the variance. This is a reconstruction of an existing home and is consistent with the neighborhood and will have no impact. Whether the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance. Based upon the narrowness of the lot, there's no way to make it a buildable lot and achieve the applicant's desired result without an area variance. 3, whether the requested area variance is substantial, mathematically perhaps, but based upon the size of the lot and the fact that the garage is actually farther away from the side lot line than the old garage, is that has limited impact. Whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district, there's no evidence that there will be any physical or environmental impact. And whether the alleged difficulty was self-created. It was, however, that's not a reason to deny the application, and I would offer those findings.
Second.
Okay. Let's see. Tony, do you mind doing this one? Tony S.
Okay, yeah, sure. Okay, so I move that the board.
Can I be a stickler for a moment, though?
Yeah.
Don't we have a full complement and Tony's an alternate?
You know, that's absolutely correct.
Sorry, Tony.
Yeah. Okay, that's okay.
So let's see. Larry.
Okay. I move that the board approve the request for a variance set forth in item number 7. This decision is based upon a review of the application, testimony of the applicant, testimony offered in the public hearing, results of site visits by board members, and the findings of the chair.
Second.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, then that motion carries. There are a couple other housekeeping things. There's a lead agency request from the planning board for Diamond Point Development. That's the self-storage site plan that we talked about earlier. And
there are two others. One is for the Vassar College Faculty Apartments, which is in front of the planning board now. It's on the site of the Watson homes, right there on the corner of Booker and Raymond. I'm not sure that there are going to be any variances necessary, but so I'm not sure if you'll see that. I don't think that there will be. And the last one is another self-storage facility. This is the Guardian self-storage facility proposed over here on Love Road. That one probably will have some variances associated with it. Again, it's just been in front of the planning board once, and they have declared their intent to be lead agency.
Okay, and that's just for our knowledge, right?
Well, I think if as long as you guys.
Well, I'd move to consent to planning board being lead agency on each of those items.
Second.
Okay. And any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
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 Are there any opposed? That motion carries. And I want to wish everyone a happy new year, and I move to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
All right, and so we have a little script for